In this lesson, we will look at subtraction of integers. We have two objectives. First, we want to find the opposite of an integer, and then we want to subtract by adding the opposite. So let's talk first of all about the opposite of an integer. And I hope you remember that we've actually already talked about this for a little bit before. Let me show you once again that number line. And I want to remind you that two numbers are opposites if their sum is 0. So let me give you an example of some opposites. If I have -4 over here and a +4 over here, those are opposites because when I add them together I get 0. I can come out here to -8, and +8 on this side is its opposite because when I add those together I get 0. So now let me remind you of a few things. If you see it written like this and you have 3 plus a -3, that's always going to be equal to 0. Those are opposites, and sometimes you will hear those called additive inverses. Once again, on this side I have -5 plus 5, which is equal to 0. What if I gave you some numbers and I ask you to find their opposites? First of all, let me give you 4. What is its opposite? Well, its opposite simply means I change the sign and I get a -4. For this one, if I start with a -5, what is its opposite? It is 5. And then for the last one, no matter how big the number is or how small it is, this one is -312 and its opposite is +312. I don't think there's anything earth-shattering about that, so let's continue on. Next, we will look at subtraction by adding the opposite. There will be two steps to what we're going to do. The first one will be to change the subtraction sign to an addition sign, and the second step will be to change the second number to its opposite. Let me give you a subtraction problem and remind you what we're going to do. Step 1 says change the subtraction sign to an addition sign. So I'm literally going to add right there. And then I change the second number to its opposite. This number is a +7 right now. I'm going to make it a -7. Now you may be thinking it was already negative, but let me remind you, this symbol is an operation, not a sign. So what I want to change this to is 5 plus a -7. Now I'm going to revert to the checkbook method because I think a lot of you can relate to that. And in this case I have deposited $5 and written a check for $7. In that case I would be $2 in the hole. Let's look at our next problem. Once again, it is a subtraction problem and I'm going to change it in two ways. I'll change the subtraction sign to an addition sign, and I will change this piece, since it is a -4, I will make it positive. Now if you literally rewrite what you see there, you see -3 plus a +4. But this is a little overkill right here. I simply need to say -3 plus 4. Once again, if I use the checkbook method, I would find that I wrote a check for $3 and I deposited $4. So when I look at my checking account, I now have $1 left in the bank. And our last one we want to look at while we're doing this is -3 minus 6. Let me remind you, the steps are add here, make that negative. When I rewrite it, it looks like this, -3 plus -6. This time it is back to the checkbook and I have written 2 checks while depositing no money. And so at this point what you should find is that you have -9. What I want to do now is give you some practice problems. I've given you 5 problems and I would recommend that you pause the video, write down these 5 problems, and work them. I highly recommend that you take the time to rewrite the problems as adding the opposite. Then you will be able to apply the checkbook method, and I hope you will be successful. Once you have completed these 5 problems, you should start your video again and be able to check your answers. Here are the answers, and let me remind you how we did this. We can add the opposite, which means I'm simply doing 3 plus 7, which is 10. Once again, I will add the opposite, which gives me a -5 plus 5. Those are opposites, so I get 0. Here I will add the opposite. When I do that, I have 7 plus a -3. Checkbook would tell me that I deposited $7 while writing a check for 3, and I would have $4 left. Number 4 is I would add the opposite. So that would give me a -3 plus -4. I just wrote 2 bad checks, and so I'm now $7 in the hole. And for the last problem, I want you to notice something. I threw in one here that should have maybe caused you to think a little bit, because this problem is an addition problem to start with, not a subtraction problem. You do not do the changes. You simply go straight to this checkbook method. So in this case, I would have deposited $5 and wrote a check for $1 and would have $4 left in the bank. Please make sure that you take the time to notice what operation you're doing before you just blindly start changing things. The only ones that change are the subtraction problems. That's all I have for you today. Please don't hesitate to call if you have questions. I'll talk to you later. Thanks. Bye-bye.